So this is our last session on the nature of the mind. And I think to start would be nice that we are seeing the big picture again. Why are we doing that? Why are we inflicting us something like that on a weekend? Because when we go in the details, sometimes we tend to forget why we do that. And the initial motivation was for us to observe what is called the Gelug Mahamudra, which is a practice that is found in many different Indo-Tibetan traditions, both in the common vehicle of the Sutrayana and as well as in the esoterical vehicle of the Vajrayana. And we wanted to explore the Mahamudra on the Sutric path. And Mahamudra basically means great seal. So imagine you're a king and you have like a big ring and you put your seal on the letters you send everywhere in the realm. So every phenomena is sealed with the seal of emptiness. That is the great seal. Everything that exists is empty of inherent existence. That's one way to read the meaning of Mahamudra, to see every phenomena as being sealed by the fact that they are empty of true existence. So that's the deepest truth considered to be in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. But before we realize that, we have to gain mastery over our mind by taming it and by learning how to focus properly. And for the practice of shamatha, there are many things we can use as an anchor, as an object to cultivate our focus. That can be the breath, that can be a visualized image, that can be what else? Loving kindness, compassion, colors, space. In the Pali tradition, there are many objects, up to 40 of the objects we can use that correspond to individual predisposition. Some they are very keen in meditating on the nature of the mind, some others find it very difficult, some they are very good with visualization, etc. But the nature of the mind has a very, very strong value because that deals with something that is very important. We saw yesterday some of the presentation that say that the mind is primary. Matter is not primary. In Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, matter is not primary. Mind is primary. It is the cause of samsara and nirvana, and by understanding its nature, we are going toward the end of the various sufferings. So, to put it simple, shamatha, the purpose is to make all our afflictions dormant. They go to sleep. And when our afflictions are dormant, our mental technology is much sharper to investigate reality. So I think one of the most important purpose for shamatha is that factor of reducing the noise of our affliction. And the second part, understanding the emptiness of the mind, the purpose is to destroy them by the root. As simple as that. And only by destroying them at the root can we liberate ourselves. And it's a gradual process. We start with taming the mind, and from the standpoint that the mind is very focused, we analyze reality. So in Mahamudra, in the Gelug Mahamudra, there are 2 steps which correspond exactly to these 2 phases of the teaching. The first being meditating on the conventional nature of the mind, placing the mind on that, training in the shamatha practice, and once this technology has matured, then to start again exploring the nature of that object on which we have focused so much that our mind has become very, very, very clear and sharp to understand its nature. And that is understanding the emptiness of the mind. 2 steps. Very, very powerful practice. And yesterday we started to see that to understand the deepest nature of the mind, we have first to understand how much we project. That's what we saw yesterday. How much we project onto everything, not always, but a lot, that the object around us, our mind, everything, sometimes is seen as existing inherently. And that is the thing we want to explore, if it's actually existing like that. Okay, so since it's the last session, I think it would be nice that we go back to the beginning. Just that you have a sense of the practice as a whole, so you may be able to replicate that. Because yes, indeed, there are various steps, many steps. Maybe it's a too much step for you, but that's a matter of habit. Because the steps that we're going to cover, they work for the mind, but they work for every object of meditation. We can transpose consciousness with the breath and do the same. Conventional nature of the breath, tame our mind, practice shamatha. Then ultimate nature of the breath is empty of true existence. We can work like that, it's fine. Except that the breath has less implication to realize its emptiness than realizing the emptiness of the I, me, or the mind. But sometimes we can play with very simple objects like cars, technological thing that it's easier to see how they don't exist inherently. Okay, so we're going to cover all the steps from the beginning, and then we will dive into the last steps of in the practice of meditation and emptiness on the nature of the mind. Okay, so let's find a comfortable position. So you've heard from me many times that meditation cannot start if we don't understand what we are supposed to meditate on. We have to find our object of meditation, and for the breath it's very easy. For the nature of the mind it's a bit tricky. It's one of the difficult points in Mahamudra, is that if we skip the first part of finding our object, very quickly we can start to space out. And all the steps will not be produced. So, first step, understand the conventional nature of the mind. How do we do that? Let's go back to understand, refresh our mind on the fact that everything that we see in the external world with our eyes, we see them through an appearance. We engage with the world through almost the same as a mirror that reflects the external world. And that aligns pretty much with science would say that we're seeing image through light coming to our eyes and then turning into electrical signal, chemical informations, and then they are decoded into something that resembles the object outside. And if you take a mirror, here I only have a telephone, but I can see you on the screen. I can see you on the screen, I can see Nitsan. And I can switch from, oh, I see Nitsan, and I see the reflection of Nitsan. I see the appearance of Nitsan into the mirror of the camera. So the same way we can switch, look at the environment around you and switch from I see the object and I engage to the appearance of those objects. There's a mental switch. I see those objects and I see those objects through an appearance of them. I see the appearance of those objects. It's not exactly the same. So you can open your eyes, look around, and do this switch. I see those objects, and I see the appearance of those objects. And when you see the appearance of those objects, you are closer to the mind than to the object itself. Already you are turning your gaze inside, that you are engaging to the object through an appearance. I see an appearance of those objects. And we don't try to go too fast in saying everything is appearance, nothing exists outside. No, but we can say, we can switch to I'm contacting appearance of the external world. And if that appearance was shut, there would be no cognition. There must be something that is responsible for the arising of that appearance. And not only the arising, but to the engagement toward this appearance. And what does the job? Consciousness, that's what it does. Consciousness has the nature of the arising of this appearance and the engagement to this appearance. Arising of the appearance, that's the clarity aspect, which is its nature, and the engagement to that appearance, which is the knowing aspect of consciousness, which is its function. And that happens simultaneously. All the time there is the arising of an appearance and an engagement to that appearance. If that was not so, there would be no cognition. Things are clear because they can be reflected. There's something that is responsible for this reflection. So let's contemplate that for a while. For me to know anything, there must be something that allows for an appearance to be. A mountain lake can only reflect the moon above if the water is clear. There is something that has this capacity within. And now let's try to experience if we can be just aware of being aware. Second step in finding the nature of consciousness. So look around, open your eyes, and rather than to emphasize on the object, which is the visual field, the shapes, colors, know that you are seeing them. It's not that the images are going to disappear, the shape and color are not going to disappear, but they are not the main focus, important. And as for every object that we want to meditate on with shamatha, with good concentration, we must sharpen the certainty factor. We must be certain. So at the beginning we say, yeah, I don't see really where it goes. And at one point we say, yeah, maybe that's the good direction. And it gets stronger. And at one point you say, I think this is it. And after we make it stronger, this is definitely that. And most of the time, our mind needs something very obvious to generate certainty because we are extremely materialistic in our cognitive processes. I'm sure this is a Vajra in front of me, and it's obvious because I'm very accustomed to see the things and to touch. But here we must develop a certainty over something that has neither shape nor color nor form. And that's the training. That takes a while to turn inside, to develop this certainty of knowing, which has no color, no shape, no sound, that is totally immaterial, and yet we know that we know. We are aware of being aware while watching, but what we are actually engaging to at that moment has no shape, color, forms, sounds, texture, tactility, etc. And it's a lot of words to indicate something that can become very, very down to earth, very obvious. Don't try to mix with too much words. The words are only here to lead you to an experience that is very, very that can become very obvious, very simple, aware of being aware. Let's try. And to help us finding it and to be sure that this is what we are meant to find, run some little tests that maybe you have an experience that lasts for half a second of, yeah, it feels that I'm just aware. Can it be that? So you try to remember that which you were focusing on at that time and say, was that thing visual? Was that thing that I was focusing on having any sound, texture? No, it was just awareness. It was not. So you eliminate the various type of physical object: sound, smell, taste, tactility, and visual objects. You eliminate and you say, yeah, but I was still onto something. I was still onto something which was neither of these 5 sense objects. So I was not deluded. We have to convince ourselves I was not deluded. I was onto something which was neither of these 5. And when the certainty built that you were actually onto something while none of these were actual sense objects, you become strong in finding the nature of the mind. You understand that this is non-material. Just awareness of awareness. Let's do it again for a little bit more. And then the last step is to find awareness of awareness that is clear knowing. I'm not sure exactly why there is this third step, because if you find awareness of awareness, you find the nature of the mind. My suggestion is maybe it's to prevent us from saying, I know that I know, but not to be actually touching the awareness, but more the me, François. I know that I know, François. This we have certainty of knowing. But here we are aware of the awareness, not aware that François knows. That's a suggestion. I don't know exactly why there's this third step, but anyway, the important thing is to remember that this is something we have to engage directly. It becomes as obvious as an external object. There's no, the reflection helps to direct our search, but what you find is extremely immediate. Just awareness of awareness. And once this becomes stronger, then at one point we can shift to the mental consciousness. We will not do that, but if we want to practice shamatha, if we want to take the consciousness as an object for developing concentration, we must at one point move to the mental consciousness. So we do exactly the same. We are aware of our awareness while that awareness is actually observing the mental events, like the thoughts, the emotions, even the space of the mind that is free from any thought. Basically, we are aware of that. We are aware of the mental consciousness. We are aware of the mental consciousness, which is not connected anymore to the senses. That's what would be our field of observation during the practice of shamatha. And we would train concentration into that, aware of what appeared to our mental consciousness. Sorry, aware of the awareness engaging to the mental sphere. And we speak a lot of emotion, Buddhist psychology, all the mental factors, but here there's a different twist, that we understand that all these movements of the mind, they are purely immaterial. Anger is immaterial, resentment, loving kindness, wisdom, they are purely ways of knowing that are without any shape, color, etc. And we see how this is extremely intimate. This is the very base of our agency, our sense of agency. Because we turn me, François, and very quickly we go to the body. Here, very quickly we go to something that is immaterial. The basis, the very basis of agency is immaterial. That can be world-changing, life-changing. But since we've covered what we did yesterday, during this process of even looking to find the nature of the mind, we must notice sometime the grasping that comes, that we want to find something that is like a camera that doesn't need anything else, that is just purely knowing. Even while we are looking for the nature of consciousness, we must notice that our mind something believes that there is a mind that is purely reflexive, purely cognizant, without anything else. That's why I told you in the search of the conventional nature of the mind, do not expect that you will find the mind and suddenly nothing else would be in the field of that consciousness. That's impossible, because consciousness has to have an object. But sometimes we think that we're going to find something that is just pure reflection. Pretty much like finding the sensor in a camera that doesn't need the image to exist. But here we move into something deeper. Okay? So now that maybe we have a better idea on finding the nature of the mind, now we're going to shift to the second phase of questioning the nature, and there we cross a threshold. The threshold that we're going to cross is, in technical terms, what we call ultimate analysis. We're not content with just okay, yeah, there's an awareness that reflects the world. We want to see how does it exist. We cross a threshold. And first, we have to identify how much we are grasping for this awareness to be existing on its own intrinsically. And if it's hard to understand this grasping to inherent existence for something that is as tricky as the nature of the mind, I told you yesterday, open your eyes and try to see how much we grasp for the external world, for the me, for my body. That helps to find the object of refutation for a simple basis, and then after that we can switch to the nature of the mind. We have to be practical. Let's do that with simple objects. So now let's open our eyes and see if our visual field, there are moments in which we believe, especially when there's a strong movement of mind with attachment or and not anxiety. Yeah, it can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be that at this moment, for our affliction to be, there must be a projection of intrinsic characteristic qualities, existence onto that object. Let's see if we can capture that. Okay? And one of the benefits of this step in the meditation on emptiness, and that's really a point that started to be very clear with Lama Tsongkhapa, which wasn't so clear before he taught, was that if you skip this first part of identifying the object of negation, you may say, okay, this object, does it exist one with its part or different with its part? You may use all the reasoning for meditating on emptiness, but what you want to refute is not the existence of the object. You don't want to refute something that exists. You want to refute something that's been projected as existing while not existing. Because otherwise your meditation of emptiness is going to go over the board. You're going to throw the baby with the bathtub water. So to identifying the object of negation is to make sure that we start the meditation of emptiness by understanding what is to be kept and what is to be removed. You don't want to remove the existence of the world objects, the conventional objects, because they exist. It's incontrovertible, it's irrefutable. There's no point in refuting the existence of something that exists because it exists. We want to refute a manner of perceiving the world that is not concordant with the way the world exists. Hence, the very good value in practice to start to just identifying what has to be refuted from what has to be kept. We don't refute the world, the phenomenon. We refute something that's been projected. And that will secure your practice in the meditation of emptiness. Okay? So we're going to do a 5-minute break. And meanwhile, I'm here. If you have questions, I can answer them. For the other one, you can stretch your legs, go for a short walk. Yes?
Yes. In Hebrew, my name is Guy.
Yes.
Thank you. The minute I realize that I'm aware, like, for example, I take a thought. In the meditation, I take a thought, and then I realize I'm aware about this thought or feeling. The same minute, isn't it became a thought as well, and not awareness? What is the difference?
Well, you have to make the difference. Maybe in your question, there's a difference between the content of your thoughts. I don't know what you mean by thoughts, because thoughts it's a tricky word. It can go for the content of your mental process, like memories, and these are thoughts, the inner voice. And thoughts could also refer to your awareness of these things. So what do you mean by
thoughts? What I mean is it's all thoughts. What takes it to be an awareness? Something different.
Okay.
Another thought, another material, another
yes.
Mental.
So awareness of awareness, you could say, I don't like to say that, but there's probably little truth into it. It's a thought of the awareness. But better to say it's the awareness of awareness. Because it's a thought, because it's conceptual. We start by conceptual. Yeah. I don't know if I answer.
Yeah. Sometimes I have to use another example, like when I look to to something outside is easier because there is an object, and then what I'm thinking about the object is different than what is the object really.
Yes.
What I'm thinking is what I am. It's not it's emptiness. It's what I'm thinking about it. Yeah. So I know this is the delusion. Yeah. What I'm thinking, what I'm projecting about the object.
Yeah, but there are many thoughts that you have that are very good also and valid. Not all thoughts are problematic. They are conceptual, so they are a bit tricky, but very much a lot of thoughts that we have, they are really good.
Better to think good, no?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, we will think about the objects, about the world. We will continue to think even if we
Absolutely, yes. Yes. Yeah.
What direction we do?
Because what we do is finding the nature of the mind by conceptual consciousness. It's a thought. It's a thought, but it's a thought that is directed to something that will help us a lot. I don't know if I'm really helpful.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any question? Remark? Struggles?
Who's behind you in the tanka?
Oh, it's Vajrasattva.
Where are his palm of his hands? I don't see them.
The palm of the hand, one is here.
Where?
Here. He holds the Vajra and he holds the bell here.
Yes.
Vajra and bell. That's a sign of often.
That's why I didn't see the hand.
Vajra.
I was searching in his elbow.
Yeah, no.
I didn't see how it goes. Okay.
Yeah, it's good to be at the center because each time I take a different tanka. Yeah. There are many more options. Yes, so are.
I was noticing that when I try to see my awareness, what I located was some kind of effort. I felt that I was paying attention. I felt that attention was strong, and suddenly I couldn't understand whether awareness was attention, because I was trying to see how I was relating to something, and I was so focused on that thing, and I felt the effort of being attentive to it, and I didn't know whether that was the nature of awareness or not.
It's hard to answer this question. Attention is an awareness. So attention, you could say I'm aware of being aware, but I'm attentive of my awareness. And guys say, this is a thought on the awareness. These are all on the right direction. Because thoughts could be taken as the awareness of your mental content, or thoughts could be mental conceptual consciousness. But your attention to your awareness, if your attention is drawn onto your awareness of something, yeah, you found it. But you started by mentioning I try to see, and that's really a tendency that we will want to find something tangible, to say this is it, and this is the real tricky part, that we have to I'm not sure, yeah, I don't say that often, but I say trust yourself in that. Trust yourself that you find something that is very space-like. Space-like is often, we saw that in the first sessions, space is often a way that we can understand consciousness. We start by understanding space, because it's really the same. It's an absence of obstruction that would prevent the mind from knowing something. That's an indication in practice that could help, even though mind is not space, is not permanent in that sense. Okay. So first step of the meditation on emptiness, finding the object of negation. And I would say to whatever, because there are many methods to meditate on emptiness, I would say always follow that first step, identifying the object of negation. Inherent I, the inherent consciousness, the inherent external world, the inherent subject, the inherent object, etc. That will secure your practice. And the step, I would say once you've done all this, once you found the nature of the mind, you found the object of negation, and I'm going to quote, I found a quote, I will send everything because I found many quotes that some of them are not closely related to what I was speaking about. Pabongka Rinpoche say, once recognized, it's easy to refute. Once cognized, it's easy to refute. Once you found that object of negation, it's easy. Once you are focusing on the nature of the mind, understand when you grasp at a mind that is intrinsically existing, all the rest can follow nicely. So what is the rest? What is the rest? First step, identifying the object of negation, to see the grasping. And to see the object that is being grasped, that doesn't exist, but at this moment we don't know it doesn't exist. It feels so real that my mind exists intrinsically. It feels so real that the external world exists intrinsically. So the step is this one. And I will choose an object that is on the visual field, but you can duplicate it for the mind, it works exactly the same. This object doesn't have intrinsic existence because it depends on other factor. It is dependent arising. This object is not existing intrinsically by itself, objectively, etc. These are all synonymous because it is dependent arising. So if dependent arising is going to help us to understand that this object doesn't exist intrinsically, we have to understand that these two are opposed. If something was to exist intrinsically, it could not depend. And if something depends, it proves that it doesn't exist on its own. So that's the second step, to understand that if something exists intrinsically, it cannot depend. And if it depends, it proves that it's not existing intrinsically. Maybe we have because I'm afraid that the word intrinsically is a bit tricky, so maybe Yael, you have the words in Hebrew that could be helpful also, or the synonyms?
Usually used in hand, but in Hebrew what you say is קיום מעצם תכונותיו שלו, מעצם כוחו שלו, מצידו שלו, שכשאומרים מצידו שלו, אז מה זה הצד השני? לא מצד תודעה מתייגת. יש איזו מהות באובייקט עצמו, שלא נמצאת מצד תודעה מתייגת, והוא לא תלוי בשום דבר, המהות נמצאת בו, כוחו שלו, תכונותיו.
Thank you, Yael. Yeah, I think it's helpful to have it also in your language because I've heard many times that what does it mean to be intrinsically? Well, that's what we have to find in the object of negation. We have to find that we grasp to that. This chocolate croissant, when I'm in the street and I don't have time to buy it, and it just crosses my eyes, and oh, this croissant is just existing on its own. I totally forget that it's been made by flour, that I would not eat flour with a spoon. It's disgusting. It's made with butter, and I'm actually pretty much not so much in butter anymore. So it's made of parts. It exists depending on its parts, on the baker and on its causes, on its parts, and it doesn't exist by itself on its own. So the second step is to understand that these two, intrinsic existence and dependent arising, they are directly opposing each other. If this object exists on its own, it doesn't exist depending on its part. It doesn't exist depending on its causes. That's how it appears also. To understand dependent arising helps us to understand deeper what it means intrinsic. It's something that is not dependent arising. So it's something that exists all by itself. And that's strange because it's how things appear very often to us. Especially when we are afflicted, we have strong disturbing emotion. If a tree exists on its own, it doesn't rely on its branches, on its trunk, on its leaves, because it's existing on its own. It's self-reliant, it's self-sustainable. It doesn't anything else apart from itself to exist. That's what it means. We really have to see the opposite in these two things. Whatever exists dependently cannot be inherently existing. Let's take a few minutes to absorb that. Whatever exists as dependent arising cannot exist inherently. We have to get firm in that conviction. And you can find objects that are very practical, trees, cars. If they exist on their own, all by themselves, they cannot rely on other factors, cannot depend on their parts, on their causes, etc. Okay. And now comes the last step. The grand finale. The grand finale in our exploration of the nature of the mind. So if, let's take high as opposed to low. If high was existing intrinsically, if low was existing intrinsically, all by itself, can anyone cite me an absurd consequence? If low was existing on its own, what would be the absurd consequence? If low was not relating or depending on high, what would be an absurd consequence? Someone?
Straight line.
Pardon?
A straight line with no compare. You cannot compare high and low. So everything is, like on the same level.
Everything would be on the same level. Would it be? Yeah, but if you see, for example, low, something that is low, like a chair is low. Is low a chair compared to a skyscraper, for example?
But you don't compare, that's what you said.
Yeah, but if the chair was low by nature,
It doesn't exist.
it would be low compared to anything because it's low by nature. So even next to the skyscraper, it would still be low because it's low by nature.
Maybe it means you cannot go on the chair because then you'll be higher than the chair, so you cannot climb the chair.
You cannot climb the chair if it was low by nature.
Complicated.
I don't know. If the chair was low by nature, then something that is smaller than the chair would still be lower than that thing that is low. I don't know if that's making clear. Because if it's low by nature, it is low to compare to everything else. Because it doesn't depend on something higher. So something tiny would still be higher because the chair is low by nature. Yes, yeah?
Like an ant walking next to the chair.
Yeah. Can you say that again? So what would be the...
So the chair will be lower than an ant walking next to it because it's low by nature.
Yeah. So if low was low by nature, it would not depend on relativity. It would not rely on... Well, it's low because the Eiffel Tower compared to the Burj Tower in Dubai, if it's low or if it's high by nature, because French are very arrogant sometimes, or Eiffel Tower, it's so high. It's high by nature, but then Americans, they come back to France and say, oh, but it's tiny. Eiffel Tower is tiny. But for us, it's so huge. So if the Eiffel Tower was high by nature, or the highest by nature, you would say, then the Burj Tower would not be higher than that. And Eiffel Tower could not be lower compared to something else. So likewise, and then we turn to consciousness, if consciousness was clear and knowing on its own, if it was clear and knowing on its own, if it was cognizing all by itself, it could not rely on an object because it knows on its own. It's totally self-reliant in the process of cognition. You would find something that is knowing on its own. I don't know how I can make it clearer than that. So we would not rely on object to exist. So what would be the absurd consequence of that? It would be that awareness is so self-reliant that it doesn't need anything to know. So basically there would be an awareness that doesn't know anything, because it would not need anything to know. So there would be an awareness that is aware of nothing, and that doesn't make sense, because an awareness is only an awareness because there's something that is known. Subject, and I mean subject, I mean consciousness, is only a subject because there's an object. So consciousness is only conscious because there is an object to that consciousness. An object, you could say, you turn this around, you could say object are only object because there's a subject observing it. It doesn't make sense to say it's an object if there's nothing that knows that. And that's why in all Buddhist school of thoughts, an object, the definition of an object is what is known by an awareness. So, if our consciousness, which by the time being we would have spent a lot of time observing, we would have understood that this consciousness is immaterial. We would see that this is the very source of the sense of agency. Now we turn onto our analytical mind and we say, if that mind exists on its own, it would actually not know anything, because something that exists on its own cannot depend. So it would stop reflecting anything. It would not reflect anything. Sometimes we think that because of emptiness, the world cannot function. But to understand emptiness is actually to understand that because things are empty, they can function. If I was existing on my own, I could not function because I could not eat, I could not depend on food, I could not depend on any factor. To exist in a living sense mean I have to depend. And for the mind to exist, for the awareness to exist, it has to rely on an object. If it was existing by itself, the process of cognition would be totally encapsulated in something self-reliable, self-autonomous. The cognition would not need any object to be cognizant. Awareness could function without anything. And if it by itself doesn't need anything, it cannot reflect anything. And that can generate a bit of wow. Because we turn to the most intimate sense of agency and we say, it doesn't exist on its own. My awareness, which is the deepest sense of agency, doesn't exist on its own. Subject/consciousness doesn't exist without object. Subject doesn't exist without object. So first step, understanding the object of negation. Second step, to understand that dependent arising and intrinsic existence, they oppose. And to understand that whatever is one, that necessarily opposes the other. And the last step is to say, okay, the mind is dependent arising. And because we've done this previous step, it will oppose the belief that the mind exists intrinsically. And there is something really, really liberating in that. Opening. That we understand that awareness doesn't exist on its own. Object, subject exist together. And once we understood that the consciousness doesn't exist on its own, we absorb ourselves into this absence of intrinsic existence. And this is when we realize the emptiness of the mind. And one point important is that emptiness is not a positive thing. Emptiness is we refute something. If you meditate on emptiness and you come out with something that is positive, that you don't need to know through a negation, this is 100% sure it's not emptiness. Emptiness is an actual refutation of something that was projected. And I was trying to see how I could imagine you have a very annoying sound for a long time. And it just stops. You are left with something which is the absence of that thing, which sounds, It's a bit the same with emptiness. It's not that you have something, but it's the stopping, the deconstruction of something that we grasp so strongly, innately from beginningless time. But it's an absence. And coming back to the question, the initial question, what does it say about the relationship that the mind has with the universe? Well, I'm not going to answer that question, because I think from our research on the nature of the mind, what you are left with at the end of this meditation emptiness speaks for itself. It doesn't have to be that you then can express it, we are all one, because then we are really using words again. The relationship between object and subject is that they don't exist intrinsically. And I think that's the best I can say. They don't exist intrinsically. I can only go through the negative form. I cannot say they are one, because that's not true. I cannot say that we are all one, but I can say which we are not. We are not intrinsically different. We are not intrinsically different. Mind and matter are not intrinsically different. And what else can we say? We mustn't look for something positive at the end. What we are left is something that is an absence. And at one point, this absence is known by a conceptual mind. And as we move on and we refine our focus, slowly the appearance of an object and the appearance of a subject are going to vanish slowly as we move toward the direct realization of emptiness. And at one point, you still have this very subtle appearance of object and subject duality, but you cannot ascertain them anymore. And once you realize emptiness directly, there's no appearance of object and subject. There's really a sense of water flowing into water. It's beyond words, it's beyond concept. For the first time, you have no appearance of dualistic intrinsic appearance. Object-subject duality is removed. And that's not something we can describe. But yet, that's the deepest truth about everything that exists. We can use signposts to indicate the direction, but we cannot speak of the experience that is beyond any of our concepts. So we cannot resume everything with words and saying, is the world one? Are we only one? No, we cannot go that far, because there's a threshold that we cross that doesn't belong to the realm of concepts anymore. And just to bring and to close a bit on the relationship between mind and matter, because that's what was also our initial plan, to speak about how can we, with words, explain the relationship between mind and matter. I'm just going to cite something that it's a takeaway. And this is for the tantric perspective, which is supposed to be the highest and the deepest practices in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. So it's from His Holiness Dalai Lama, and I think it's The Universe in a Single Atom, that book, I think. So according to the Guhya Samaja Tantra, it's the Tantra that is very common for the Gelug school, one of the principal traditions within Vajrayana Buddhism. At the most fundamental level, no absolute division. No absolute division. You see the wording, no absolute division. It doesn't say, it goes to the negative. Can be made between mind and matter. Matter in its subtlest form is prana. And prana is the Sanskrit word for wind, as well as vayu. It's interchangeable most of the time. Lung in Tibetan, chi in Chinese. It's a vital energy which is inseparable from consciousness. These two are different aspects of an indivisible reality. Prana is the aspect of mobility, dynamism, and cohesion, while consciousness is the aspect of cognition and the capacity for reflective thinking. So according to the Guhya Samaja Tantra, when a world system comes into being, we are witnessing the play of this energy and consciousness reality. Because of the indivisibility of consciousness and energy, there is a profound, intimate correlation between the elements within our body and the natural element in the outside world. This subtle connection can be discerned by individuals who have gained a certain level of spiritual realization or who have a naturally higher level of perception. I'm going to share this source. Just to follow, there was something else on that. For example, the 15th century Tibetan thinker Tatsang Lotsawa conducted an experiment upon himself and found a total concordance between his personal experience of changes that naturally occur in one's breathing pattern and those described in the Kalachakra Tantra during a celestial event like solar or lunar eclipse. In fact, according to Buddhist Vajrayana thought, there is an understanding that our bodies represent microcosmic images of the greater macrocosmic world. Because of this perspective, the Kalachakra Tantra pays tremendous attention to study of the celestial bodies and their movement. In fact, there is an elaborate system of astronomy in this text. So what it says here is that according to this text, there's a strong correlation between the movement of the outside macrocosmic world and the movement of our mind. And that touches a bit on astrology inside, indeed. And I've also considered many of the sources that explain the birth of a universe. And in the cosmology in Buddhist thought, we see a strong correlation between the evolution of the physical world and the predisposition of the beings. It's because of a kind of duality in the mind that the day and night start to take shape. That within our body, it's because we start to grasp at grosser levels of things, that food start to be grosser and grosser. So it's interesting. I don't know how much we can follow that literally, but it's a very interesting concept that the world in which we inhabit it now is a reflection of our collective karma. It's not totally random. So it doesn't negate the physical laws, but it's a reflection of our collective karma. What else can I share before we bring this session to a close? Yeah, I will share all these resources anyway. So definitely by meditating on the empty nature of the mind, that really is shaking this establishment that there is me, and at the depths of me, a consciousness that is just capturing by itself the world. No, there's a dependent relationship. And we come to an end by saying the mind doesn't exist on its own because it's dependently arising. And the more we see how much the mind then, after in meditation, the more we see how much we need object for knowing. The more we will see this dependence, the more it will affirm our understanding of emptiness. And that's when our view of the middle way, our view of emptiness is really balanced. That the more we will understand emptiness, the more it will affirm the dependency. And the more we'll engage in the dependency, the more we will understand emptiness. That's far from an emptiness that negates the existence of things that exist. It's really not the case. It's because things are empty, they depend. It's because they don't have inherent existence that the causal laws are so valid. That karma is so valid because there is a dependency. Voila. So that is it of our 4 sessions on the nature of the mind. I will send you the source as well as an outline of the various steps of those 2 meditations, so that can accompany you hopefully in the future. We have a little time for sharing now before we wrap this up. Guidi, yeah?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
First, thanks very much for a very interesting lesson. When you talk about the consciousness, I'm just thinking whether you use consciousness as a term to express the full me, everything inside is included, or is there any relationship, dependent, not dependent, between the consciousness and the entire thing?
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned in the first talks, is that we have to a bit forget about this term consciousness, because it can be used in so many different contexts. That is better that we relate solely on its definition of clear knowing. So because it's clear knowing, it cannot refer to anything physical. And the self and the consciousness, they are not the same. Self, me, and my consciousness, we exist together, but it's not the same, because a consciousness is not a person. Me, François, I'm a person. So consciousness is immaterial. It's not the brain, it's not the heart. It may be influenced by these things, okay, but it's not equal to that. So that's why I was contemplating a scientist who made, and I will share that with you because it's very, very interesting. He tried to capture all the different theory on consciousness that exist today. And he has he's made a paper for science, and he has about 300 different definitions of consciousness. 80% they are materialistic definition of consciousness, only materialistic. Though some they are panpsychism, which means that matter is conscious. Some they are monist, some they are idealistic, dualist, etc. So he's making the whole list on the various definitions that we see according to science and philosophy. It's brilliant. So here we have only one that is clear knowing. So yes, that was my answer. The last one, maybe?
I wanted just to ask if what we taught in the beginning of this session about trying to recognize the object of negation, the mind, that it's like an illusion, like it's a reflection. So you need to I need to watch again the recording, but you need to notice that it's an illusion, and then you try to negate the illusion.
Okay, so the consciousness is never the object of negation, because the object of negation must be something that doesn't exist but is believed to exist. So the intrinsic consciousness is the object of negation, not the consciousness. It's something we add on to something that exists. Is it clearer?
Yeah.
So it's how much we believe sometime the consciousness to be existing intrinsically. So this intrinsic existence of the consciousness, this is what we have to check if it's right or not, if it's actually existing like that. Last one, we have a bit extra time.
May I?
Yes?
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't put on my face.
It's okay.
Physical.
I still see a face.
I wanted to say before you were talking about a chair which is low or high. I had this notion that if the word low wouldn't exist if there weren't a relationship between the low and the high, because the low as intrinsic doesn't have any meaning. So
Yes, you're right. If law was existing by itself, it would not mean anything. Yes, that's true. For law to mean something, it must depend on high. That's a very good yes.
do with a relation,
Yes.
they actually make the point that all the things are dependent around.
Yeah. Beautiful and ugly, high and low, me and you. And even in meditation on bodhicitta, we start to equalize ourselves with other, to know that me, I am only me in relation to me being here now, but for you, I'm not a me, I'm a someone else. So me and you exist dependently, and with language we can understand easily that there are many categories that work together.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have those words.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can...
Bad and good, angry and calm.
Yes. Yes. Peaceful and unpeaceful. So many of them.